My wife cheated with my father, then demanded half my inheritance. I thought I had everything figured out when I married her 3 years ago. We met at a coffee shop downtown where she was reading some philosophy book that I pretended to understand just to start a conversation. She had this way of laughing that made my chest feel warm, and when she smiled, her whole face lit up like someone had just told her the best joke in the world. We moved in together after 6 months, and I was convinced I had found my person. My dad always had this charm about him that made people gravitate toward him at parties. He was the type who could walk into a room and within minutes have everyone laughing at his stories. After my mom passed away 4 years ago, he seemed to lose some of that spark, but whenever my wife was around, I noticed he perked up again. I thought it was sweet how she could bring out his old personality. The first time I caught them being weird was during our housewarming party last spring. I walked into the kitchen to grab more ice and saw them standing closer than normal people usually stand when they are just talking. She was touching his arm and looking up at him with these eyes that I recognized because she used to look at me that way. When they noticed me, they both jumped apart like they had been caught doing something they shouldn't have been doing. I convinced myself I was being paranoid because my brain tends to create problems where none exist. Marriage changes people, and maybe she was just being friendly with my dad because she wanted to make a good impression. But then I started noticing little things that made my stomach twist into knots. She would text constantly during dinner, claiming it was work stuff, but she would smile at her phone in a way that seemed too personal for professional messages. The second major shift happened when my grandmother died last month and left me her house and a substantial amount of money. My wife suddenly became very interested in our financial future and kept asking questions about inheritance laws and community property. She downloaded apps on her phone to track our expenses and started making spreadsheets about our assets. The timing felt strange because she had never shown much interest in money before. My dad started coming over more frequently after the funeral, always with some excuse about needing to borrow tools or wanting to help with yard work. He would stay for hours, and I would find them in deep conversations that would stop abruptly when I entered the room. She started wearing makeup around the house on days when she knew he was coming over, and she would change into nicer clothes even though we were just hanging out at home. One evening, I decided to test my suspicions by pretending to leave for a business trip, but actually staying at my friend's apartment across town. I felt like some kind of detective from a bad movie, but I had to know what was going on. I waited until the next afternoon and drove by our house to see if anything looked unusual. My dad's car was parked in our driveway, and when I looked through the living room window, I saw them sitting very close together on our couch. My hands started shaking as I used my phone to record what I was seeing through the window. They were kissing, and she was wearing the red dress that she had bought for our anniversary last year. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach and then asked me to run a marathon. The betrayal hit me in waves, first the shock, then the anger, then this overwhelming sadness that made me feel like I was drowning. I sat in my car for what felt like hours, trying to figure out what to do next. Part of me wanted to storm into the house and confront them immediately, but another part of me felt completely paralyzed. I had never experienced anything like this before, and I had no idea how someone was supposed to react when they discovered their wife was having an affair with their own father. The next morning, I acted like nothing had happened and went about my normal routine. I made coffee, checked my emails, and pretended to be interested in the weather forecast on the morning news. She was being extra affectionate, bringing me toast and asking about my plans for the day. The whole situation felt surreal, like I was living in some twisted alternate reality where people I trusted were capable of betraying me in the worst possible way. I decided to hire a private investigator because I needed concrete evidence before I could make any major decisions. The investigator was this older woman who had been in the business for 20 years, and she assured me that she had seen everything before. She followed them for 2 weeks and documented their meetings at hotels, restaurants, and even at my dad's house when I was at work. The photographs were devastating, but also somehow liberating, because they confirmed what I already knew in my heart. There were pictures of them holding hands while walking through the park, where my parents used to take me as a kid. There were images of them entering and leaving hotel rooms together. The investigator had even recorded some of their conversations using specialized equipment that I didn't know existed. When I finally confronted my wife, she didn't deny anything but instead tried to turn the situation around by claiming that I had been emotionally unavailable and that she had found comfort in my father's company. She said that their relationship had developed naturally over time and that she hadn't planned for it to happen. She cried and apologized, but her words felt hollow and calculated rather than genuinely remorseful. The most shocking part came when she informed me that she was planning to file for divorce and that she expected to receive half of everything I owned, including the inheritance from my grandmother. She had apparently consulted with a lawyer and learned about community property laws in our state. She claimed that since we had been married when I received the inheritance, she was entitled to a portion of it regardless of the circumstances of our separation. My dad tried to reach out to me through text messages and voicemails, but I blocked his number because I couldn't handle hearing his voice without feeling this rage that scared me. He sent letters to my house that I threw away without reading. Some of our mutual friends tried to mediate the situation, but I wasn't interested in forgiveness or reconciliation. The trust had been broken in a way that felt impossible to repair. I spent weeks researching legal options and discovered that inheritance laws vary significantly depending on how the assets are handled during marriage. Since I had kept my grandmother's money in a separate account and hadn't mixed it with our joint finances, there was a good chance I could protect it from being divided in the divorce proceedings. I hired the best lawyer I could afford and prepared for a legal battle. The most unexpected turn came when my uncle, who had always been close to my dad, reached out to tell me something that changed everything. He had been suspicious of my dad's behavior for months and had done some investigating of his own. He discovered that my dad had been having financial problems and owed money to some dangerous people who weren't patient about collecting their debts. My uncle showed me bank statements and loan documents that proved my dad had been borrowing money from multiple sources and using his house as collateral. He had apparently convinced my wife to help him gain access to my inheritance by seducing her and promising to share the money with her once they got it. The whole affair had been orchestrated as a way to solve his financial problems by stealing from his own son. The revelation that their relationship had been primarily motivated by money rather than genuine feelings somehow made the betrayal feel even worse. I realized that I had been manipulated by two people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. My wife had been willing to destroy our marriage for money, and my dad had been willing to sacrifice his relationship with his son to avoid facing the consequences of his poor financial decisions. I gathered all the evidence I had collected and presented it to my lawyer, who assured me that the fraud and conspiracy aspects of their scheme would work in my favor during the divorce proceedings. We filed counterclaims alleging that my wife had entered into the marriage under false pretenses and had conspired with my father to defraud me of my inheritance. The legal strategy was aggressive, but I felt like I had no choice but to fight back with everything I had. The final confrontation happened at a mediation session where both my wife and my dad were present with their respective lawyers. When confronted with all the evidence of their scheme, my dad broke down and admitted everything. He confessed that he had manipulated my wife into the affair by promising her financial security and a better life. He revealed that he had been gambling online and had lost most of his savings, leaving him desperate for a way to pay his debts. My wife's reaction was a mixture of shock and fury, because she realized that she had been used just as much as I had been. She had genuinely believed that my dad cared about her and that they had a future together. When she learned that their entire relationship had been built on his need for money, she felt betrayed and humiliated. Her lawyer advised her to cooperate with my legal team in exchange for a reduced settlement. The divorce was finalized 6 months later, and I managed to keep my inheritance intact while only having to pay a small settlement to cover some of our shared debts. My wife moved out of state and cut off all contact with both my dad and me. I heard through mutual friends that she had started seeing someone new and was trying to rebuild her life, but I wasn't interested in updates about her situation. My relationship with my dad remains completely severed, and I have no plans to reconcile with him in the future. He lost his house to foreclosure and moved into a small apartment on the other side of town. Some family members have tried to convince me to forgive him, arguing that desperation can make people do terrible things, but I can't get past the fact that he was willing to destroy his own son's life to solve his problems. The experience taught me that trust is incredibly fragile, and that people are capable of betraying you in ways that you never imagined possible. I learned that love isn't always enough to protect you from being hurt by the people who are supposed to care about you most. I also discovered that I'm stronger than I thought I was, and that I can survive even the most devastating betrayals. I'm still processing everything that happened, and some days are harder than others. I moved out of the house that I shared with my wife because it held too many painful memories, and I'm slowly building a new life for myself. I've started going to the gym regularly and have taken up hiking as a way to clear my head and find some peace. I've also been reading more books and learning new skills to keep my mind occupied. Dating feels impossible right now because I don't trust my judgment when it comes to people's motives and intentions. I find myself analyzing every interaction and looking for signs that someone might be trying to manipulate me or use me for something. I know that this level of suspicion isn't healthy, but I can't seem to turn it off. I'm hoping that time will help me heal and that eventually I'll be able to trust people again. The inheritance money sits in my account mostly untouched because I haven't figured out what to do with it yet. Part of me wants to use it to travel and see the world, while another part thinks I should invest it wisely and secure my financial future. I've been getting advice from financial advisors, but I'm not ready to make any major decisions about it yet. For now, it serves as a reminder of what I almost lost and how important it is to protect the things that matter to you. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had never discovered their affair and they had successfully carried out their plan. Would they have continued their relationship after stealing my money, or would my dad have discarded my wife once he got what he needed? The questions haunt me, but I try not to spend too much time thinking about alternate scenarios because they only make me feel worse. The most difficult part of the whole experience was realizing that I had been living a lie for months without knowing it. Every conversation, every shared meal, every moment of intimacy with my wife had been tainted by her deception. Every interaction with my dad had been manipulated by his hidden agenda. I felt like I had been sleepwalking through my own life, while the people closest to me were plotting against me. I've learned to find small moments of happiness in everyday things like good coffee, sunny mornings, and funny videos that my friends send me. I've reconnected with old friends who I had lost touch with during my marriage, and I've discovered that there are people in my life who genuinely care about my well-being without expecting anything in return. These relationships feel more precious now, because I understand how rare genuine loyalty and affection really are. My grandmother's house, which was part of the inheritance, has become my sanctuary. I spend weekends there working on small renovation projects and tending to her garden. Being in her space makes me feel connected to family members who actually loved me unconditionally. I've found letters and photographs that she left behind, and reading her thoughts and memories has helped me understand that betrayal and loss are part of the human experience that every generation faces. The legal battle was exhausting and expensive, but it taught me that I'm capable of fighting for myself when necessary. I learned about contracts, property law, and financial planning in ways that I never expected to need. I discovered that I have a stubborn streak that emerges when I'm backed into a corner, and I'm actually proud of how I handled the situation despite feeling overwhelmed most of the time. Looking back, I can see warning signs that I ignored or rationalized away, because I wanted to believe that the people I loved were trustworthy. I noticed changes in behavior, inconsistencies in stories, and moments of suspicious activity, but I chose to give them the benefit of the doubt. I've learned that sometimes your instincts are trying to protect you from something that your heart doesn't want to acknowledge. The experience has changed my perspective on marriage, family, and relationships in general. I used to believe that love was enough to overcome any obstacle, but now I understand that compatibility, shared values, and mutual respect are equally important. I've realized that some people are capable of compartmentalizing their emotions in ways that allow them to hurt others without feeling genuine remorse. My cousin, who went through a similar situation a few years ago, has become an unexpected source of support and advice. She helped me understand that the shame and embarrassment I felt were normal reactions to betrayal, but that I didn't need to carry those feelings forever. She taught me that healing is a process that happens in stages, and that setbacks are part of the journey rather than signs of failure. I've started volunteering at a local community center where I help with administrative tasks and event planning. The work gives me a sense of purpose and connects me with people who are facing their own challenges. Hearing their stories and seeing their resilience has helped me put my own situation into perspective and reminded me that everyone is dealing with difficult circumstances in their own way. The hardest part about moving forward is accepting that I may never fully understand why the people I trusted chose to betray me in such a calculated way. I've had to learn to live with unanswered questions and accept that some explanations might never make sense to me. I've realized that closure is something I have to create for myself, rather than something that other people can give me. My therapist, who I started seeing after everything fell apart, has helped me work through the anger and sadness that threatened to consume me during the worst parts of this experience. She's taught me techniques for managing overwhelming emotions and helped me develop healthier ways of processing difficult situations. The sessions have been challenging but necessary for my mental health and recovery. I've discovered that rebuilding trust in other people starts with learning to trust myself again. I had to acknowledge that I'm capable of making good decisions, and that the betrayal I experienced was about their character flaws rather than my failures as a husband or son. This shift in perspective has been crucial for my ability to move forward and consider the possibility of meaningful relationships in the future. The financial independence that came with my inheritance has given me options and opportunities that I didn't have before. I'm considering going back to school to study something that genuinely interests me, or maybe starting a small business that aligns with my values. Having this flexibility has made me realize that sometimes the worst experiences can lead to unexpected opportunities for growth and change. My new apartment is smaller than the house I shared with my wife, but it feels more like home because everything in it belongs to me and reflects my actual preferences rather than compromises we made as a couple. I've decorated it with things that make me happy, and I've created spaces for hobbies and activities that I neglected during my marriage. The simplicity and authenticity of my current living situation brings me a sense of peace that I hadn't experienced in years. The story of what happened has spread through our social circle, and I've had to learn to deal with the awkwardness of people not knowing what to say or how to act around me. Some friends have been incredibly supportive, while others have distanced themselves because they find the situation too uncomfortable or complicated. I've come to appreciate the people who stuck by me and realize that crisis situations reveal who your true friends really are. I still drive past places that hold memories of my marriage and my relationship with my dad, and sometimes those encounters catch me off guard with unexpected waves of sadness or anger. But I've learned that these emotional responses are becoming less frequent and less intense as time passes. I'm beginning to believe that healing is possible, even from the deepest betrayals, and that I can build a new life that doesn't revolve around the pain of what happened to me.